Good morning, everybody. I am Faustine Zoveda. I work with the Forest and Landscape Restoration Mechanism of FAO. And I'm very glad to welcome you today to this online session entitled Enhancing Restoration Capacities in African Drylands, a Decade for Action, which is co-organized by the FAO, the GLF, and UFRO. The session of today, as its title indicates, will focus on restoration gaps, needs, but also opportunities for scaling up restoration in the African drylands and beyond that throughout Africa throughout the decade. And we will have two sub-sessions in this session. We will start with 40 minutes of plenary, where we will hear different speakers and panelists before moving into a workshop format where we really want to hear from you. So we hope you stay on board and share your thoughts and ideas with us. At all times, please, you can share your ideas, suggestions, and questions in the chat box. We will make our best to answer them either now or later before the end of the GLF Africa. Let me now introduce our keynote speaker, Tina Vahanen, who is the Deputy Director of the Forestry Division at FAO and who will open this session. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Faustine. So very warm welcome from FAO side as a co-organizer to this session. And I would just like to start asking, so what's the issue here? Why are we talking about enhancing restoration capacities in dryland, in African drylands? So we do have an issue. Ecosystem degradation affects the well-being of at least 3.2 billion people. That's 40% of the world's population. And it costs the world more than $6 trillion a year. In drylands, climate change, unsustainable land use and land management, and inefficient water use are the main causes of degradation and lead to water shortages, desertification, and major losses of ecosystem services. 2/3 of the African continent are desert or drylands, but they're vital for agriculture and for food production, especially where populations depend heavily on the exploitation of natural resources. However, over 70% of them are estimated to be degraded. Without large-scale restoration of these degraded drylands, the objectives of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Sustainable Development Goals will not be met. So, what do we have to facilitate solving the issue? Countries have made strong national and international commitments, such as within the Rio Conventions, the Bonn Challenge, and the associated AFR 100. To support and scale up efforts, the UN General Assembly proclaimed 2021 to 2030 to be the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And this decade, as you well know, is being launched this week. The decade will be tackling the challenges caused by the loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services and climate change, and these affecting food and water security, poverty, and human health. The vision of the decade is a world where, for the health and well-being of all life on Earth and that of future generations, we have restored the relationship between humans and nature by increasing the area of healthy ecosystems and by putting the stop to their loss, fragmentation, and degradation. So let me now turn to the title of our event. So what's the role of capacity development? The UN Decade strategy identified limited technical knowledge and capacity in both public and private sectors as a major barrier for materializing large-scale ecosystem restoration initiatives. Large-scale restoration or large-scale ecosystem restorations within any ecosystem requires close collaboration among a wide range of individuals and organizations, equipped with a diverse array of skills, as well as technical knowledge, specific to that particular ecosystem where they're working. In many cases, there are still insufficient number of individuals and organizations with the necessary skills and knowledge. So without comprehensive effort to address these capacity gaps, the goals of the decade will not be achieved, nor will be the national goals. Just to conclude my intervention, let me introduce the broad objectives of this session. This session provides a unique opportunity to present the results of the African Capacity Needs Assessment undertaken by the FAO-led taskforce on best practices that works in support of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. We hope that this session will raise awareness of the existing systemic capacities for restoration, as well as the current gaps and barriers, and particularly of the opportunities to meet these needs in the context of the UN Decade. The session will be very interactive, so stay tuned and participate actively, and make your views and voices heard out and loud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tina. And now let's welcome Christophe Bezassier, who is a senior expert in forests and a forestry officer for the Forest and Landscape Restoration Mechanism in the Forestry Division of FAO, as well as co-leader on the task force of best practices. Thank you, Christophe.
Thank you, Faustine, for the floor. If we can share my presentation on the screen. I will present to you briefly the task force on best practices. This task force is a collaborative effort on knowledge capitalization and dissemination, including identification of new knowledge products. To date, we have more than 120 members from 46 different organizations. You can see a few logos on my slide. We have a web page on our FAO website with more details on and a leaflet with more details on this task force. Those links will be shared by my colleague Andrea in the chat. This task force is trying to implement 7 major outputs. One, of course, is the operationalization of the task force to have a good organization, prioritization of ecosystems, identification of key resource partners. So it has been done at the beginning. We established this task force in March 2020, sorry. Then we started to work on the capacity need assessment to be presented today with a focus on Africa. Based on this capacity need assessment, we will try to develop a knowledge and learning plan for the decade. And of course, we will probably draft terms of reference for new flagship products to be prepared during the decade. And finally, we have a transversal and long-term activity to collect and capitalize good practices. Next slide, please. I want to present briefly now just few achievements of our task force. First, we prepared some principles for ecosystem restoration in collaboration with task force members, the Society for Ecological Restoration, and IUCN, the Commission on Ecosystem Management. We proposed 9 principles as the basis for criteria to define what qualifies as ecosystem restoration and good practice. It's very important to be able to provide guidance to restoration practitioners. We have a second key achievement on collection and capitalization of good practices. For the collection of new practices, we want to have a decade label in existing platforms such as WOCAT, Panorama, and other platforms for other type of ecosystems, in marine ecosystems including. And we have also a form available directly from the website, DECAD website, and you can see the link on the document on my slide. What we want also to do is to capitalize on existing practices. We are not starting from scratch. So we want to help and to guide users toward key platforms, existing platforms such as WOCAT. Finally, We have global restoration capacity need assessment results that will be presented now, and with a focus on Africa. So over to you, Faustine.
Thank you, Christophe. And so let's dive deeper, sorry, into this capacity needs assessment. Robin Chasdon, who is a researcher and consultant at Forest Restoration International and a member of the Task Force on Best Practices, will present us those key findings of the capacity needs assessment with a specific focus on Africa.
Thank you, Faustine, and greetings to all of you who are participating. I will continue with the slides that were being shared. Thank you. Okay. So we conducted an assessment, and many of you may have participated in this. And the goal of our assessment was really to understand what and where are the system-wide capacities, and which capacities need to be enhanced in order to reach several objectives. One of these is to achieve a baseline of existing capacities today at the beginning of the decade, and we can also use this to chart our progress in increasing capacity and addressing the needs. We want to get information to identify the strengths, the gaps, the needs, as well as the barriers to achieving restoration goals, and many of these really do relate to capacity issues. And also to guide the decade system-wide capacity development efforts by mainstreaming restoration capacities into regional and subnational and national knowledge and learning action plans. So next. So the global survey that we conducted involved over 1,000 respondents globally, but today we're going to focus on responses from the 338 participants from Africa who work in Africa. This geographic designation is based on where the participants, respondents work. Africa composed about 25% of the responses in our global survey. But so that's what I'm going to be focusing on with the following presentation. Next. We discovered that there was a gender bias in the respondents, and about 74% were male as opposed to about 24% female. And also there was a broad distribution of ages responding, but with a peak in the 35 to 44 year range. We may need to target particular groups then for further information on the capacity needs so that we can do have a more broader representation. Next slide, please. We also asked where the respondents work to do their restoration, and it turns out that the highest fraction of the respondents work in forest ecosystems and farmland ecosystems. And we also feel it's important to get improved representation of respondents who work with grassland and savanna systems, wetlands and peatlands and oceans and coasts, as well as urban restoration. We wanted to find out who has access to professional capacity development opportunities. And we found that about 41% of the respondents in Africa do have access to such opportunities, but a very high fraction have no access or there is no opportunity available. So this is also targeting a need to develop greater opportunities for professional capacity development. Next. And then we wanted to frame the responses of capacity needs in terms of the stakeholder groups. So each of the respondents was asked to assign a group to themselves. And we have a large fraction here, 56%, who represent government, NGOs, working at national and international levels. And 12% work at local or subnational levels with government or NGOs. About 10% work in research and education. 14% are land users or small-scale producers, community members, including indigenous people organizations. And finally, we have some representation of investors and donors, private sector. Next slide, please. So what were the gaps that were identified? We looked at the responses and were able to distinguish particular gaps in each of these different sector groups. And first, I want to address the government and NGO categories, which we divided up into the national and international versus the local or subnational. And we found there was a lot of overlap in terms of what these different agencies felt were important gaps. For one, there was a need to engage more actors in restoration from different sectors, including mining and energy. A need to enhance planning, also to improve capacity for assessing and mapping ecosystem degradation, and for developing and implementing policies and actions to promote better restoration activities. There were some differences. The national and international governments groups focused on the capacity needs for mobilizing finance for restoration and for various implementation activities, whereas the local and subnational groups emphasized the need to raise capacity for monitoring. In the sector, the research and education sector, there was some capacity needs identified for costs and benefits of degradation and restoration, for developing decision support tools, models, and guidelines, and also for enhancing the capacity and support services for restoration. Next slide, please. And this will be my final slide. The investor and private sector groups identified several capacity needs as well. These include innovative financing solutions, including risk sharing mechanisms, better manage investment risks, and also recognizing there's a need for sustainable financing for restoration, long-term funding mechanisms, and for developing partnerships and matchmaking platforms between donors and recipients. And finally, the land user group emphasized the importance of raising capacity for mobilizing finance for community level restoration activities, for implementing and monitoring community-based restoration activities, including mediating land use conflicts and mapping the geographic boundaries of restoration activities and providing incentives. And finally, the need for organizing capacity development and engagement, and documenting indigenous and traditional restoration practices. So that completes my brief summary. We will be digging much deeper into the results, and you'll be hearing more about our findings in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin, for highlighting those gaps. And we now want to turn to our panelists and discuss a bit more in depth what is already out there to fill these gaps, and to shed light upon a few existing initiatives, as well as discuss their upscaling potential in the context of the UN decade. So I'm pleased to now welcome our 6 panelists of today. So we will have with us today Adejoke Akinyele, who is a reader at the Department of Forest Production and Products of the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. We have Esther Ekua Amoako, who is a lecturer at the Faculty of Natural Resources and Environment of the University for Development Studies of Tamale in Ghana, as well as a PhD student at Rhodes University in South Africa. They will be joined by Steve Makongwa, who is a senior lecturer at the Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Also, Jessica Jepkosgai Kiplagat, Community of Practice Coordinator for the Africa Chapter Manager of the GLFX, will be present. We will hear Musa Mayachi Chipkao, who is an alumni of the Restoration Factory training program, as well as the Executive Director of the African Center for Agrobusiness in Niger. And finally, Manuela Kegep, who is forest environmentalist and an alumni of another training program from the Yale University, which is called ELTI. So let's start with the questions to our panelists. And the first question is for you, Adijoke. So could you please tell us what restoration elements are already there in existing curricula in ecology, forestry, soil science, agriculture, energy, water management, geography, etc., and what is needed to implement interdisciplinary lectures across sectors or subjects through project teaching in support of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration? Adijoke.
Okay, thank you very much. From the University of Ibadan, the Department of Forestry was established in 1963, and incidentally, it was one of the organizations that supported the establishment was FAO. And over the years, we've been providing professional personnel that are qualified in forestry and allied land management, including restoration. So we've been able to equip them with knowledge and skills in order to produce and manage renewable natural resources on a sustainable basis. And over the years, there has been various levels of development and growth. So in the University of Ibadan, the restoration element that is available is at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. And these lectures are available in different aspects. We have the classroom aspect where we teach. We also have the practical aspect where students go to the field to carry out some research work. And of course, there's also the research that is actually done by both the lecturers and the student. So some of the things that we've been doing over the years include the monitoring and measurement of deforestation and forest degradation, because we know that it is important to know what is happening right there on the field and then let them know how to go about this monitoring and the measurement. And so after that, they also have opportunity to learn about how the restoration and rehabilitation is carried out and the different approaches that can be used at both the site and the landscape level. Certification as it happens, and then sand dune fixation and the various techniques that could be used at all these levels. We look at climate change and with the different and how it affects forest disturbances currently. Then at the same time, we also want to know, okay, how nutrient cycling occur in our forest and the soil organic matter formation that is able to provide the nutrient that these trees actually need for them to grow and to develop. We've been able to teach our students about forest conservation and biodiversity management. We've been involved in ecosystem services and management. There is also the issue of forest protection and the management of different protected areas that we have in the country. And then we also know that the issue of ecosystem dynamics and biogeochemical cycling is important for us, and there are issues that we've been looking at. Then in this part of the world, the issue of agroforestry system is very important to us when we're talking about landscape restoration, because now we can have the farmers combining the arable crops with forest trees on the same piece of plot of land. So we've been teaching our students different aspects of agroforestry systems and practices. We've talked about how agroforestry and soil conservation could be carried out. And we've had different lectures on how to design and evaluate agroforestry practices. And there are various case studies that we provide for students to look at and then to monitor, and also at the same time to go out to the field to be able to see what is actually happening. We try to make our classes as practical oriented as possible. So it's not just all about the class, and different research are carried out at these different levels. Then but how can we support the UN Decade ecosystem restoration? One of the things that we think that it's very important for us to be able to support this UN Decade ecosystem restoration it involves capacity building, is to find a way of carrying out collaborative research among the various disciplines. For example, in my university, there's an ongoing restoration project that the students are carrying out, along the belt of a dam within the university campus. And this restoration project will involve students from forestry, from wildlife, from aquaculture, and other disciplines, so that all of them have input in this restoration. We also think that monitoring and evaluation is very important, and this should be designed for baseline studies that are embedded in various projects that are carried out. Then part of the things that could also support capacity building is to ensure that the students that are being trained are interned at both government and private organizations, so that they carry out this forest restoration at different levels. It's also important to be able to identify and develop different propagation protocols, especially for several indigenous tree species of Africa that we have only been able to identify them. We know their uses, but we have not been able to develop the protocols that is needed for us to be able to manage them properly. So it's important to be able to do this for especially species with diverse functional roles in the communities. Once they have that diversity in them, it's going to be easy for communities to be able to accept these species. It's also important that technical support and training be provided to ensure that the lecturers that are teaching the students are up to date with the best global practices in ecosystem restoration. So in my university, part of the things we have also put in place is to make sure that we have courses and seminars that cut across the disciplines in the university, so that this can foster future collaboration. So all this aspect could be further expanded by providing students with insights and skills that will involve solving the different complex land management and forest landscape restoration challenges that we have. Of course, although the University of Ibadan already have all these institutional courses at the undergraduate level that introduce all our students in the university to the basics in the forestry, then it's still important that we should further expand this issue so that we can accommodate current global changes that are happening in the area of global landscape restoration. Thank you very much. Passing.
Thank you very much for sharing all of those very concrete ideas that are very inspiring and should be possible to take on board. So now the question is about how can we make sure that those great actions can be sustained over the long term. And so my next question is to Esther Ekua Amoako. And Esther, what we would like to hear from you is what would be the key success factors to ensure sustainability of capacity development efforts implemented during the decade? Over to you.
Thank you very much. And I'm speaking to the question, what would be the key success factors to ensure sustainability of capacity development efforts implemented during the decade? And I would like to start by saying that there has been a declaration on capacity development as far back as 2005, and this was was made in Paris. And it sees capacity development as a necessary endogenous process, and it should be led within country, with donors playing a supportive role. So according to the vision, political leadership and prevailing political and governance systems are very critical factors in creating opportunities, as well as setting limits for capacity development efforts. And I would say that there has been a lot of interventions in this regard. There's been a lot done by governments, individuals, non-governmental organizations. We can talk about small, big organizations. And so we therefore need to create synergies between these actions that have already taken place, so that they work best to save the environment. And so I would say that to ensure sustainability of development efforts for restoration, first, we need data. We need data on current annual rate of deforestation. And in this case, I would mention forest and savannas, water resources, and wetlands. Mostly what we know is about forest. There's a lot of forest assessment on forest, and sometimes savannas are not really mentioned. But in this case, where we're referring to dry lands, then savannas would be captured, and it's really important that we have current data on the rate of deforestation. There's also the need to do some costing of restoring degraded ecosystems. Normally, like I mentioned earlier, we would talk about land degradation assessment, and we're referring to forest. It will be fine to also look at improvements whilst we're talking about restoration. We shouldn't just look at the cost, we should also look at the benefits. If ecosystems are restored, what would be the benefits that we would all enjoy? In this case, we need comprehensive toolboxes for restoration in different ecoregions. Normally, we would we'll pick one experience and try to replicate in another area, probably a forest experience, and trying to do the same in a savanna ecosystem, but all these haven't really worked. And so we need toolboxes that work for the different regions, different ecoregions, that would work for savannas, for forest, in terms of restoration tools. And we know that this can be achieved through relevant research. I'm saying relevant research because we have done some research in the past and that are not being used. Probably they have lost relevance, but in this case, we have to conduct research that we can easily apply in the field, and that can also inform policy, and that will be very practical for those at the community level to easily embrace. And so at the local level, I think that we should see restoration as a business. If restoration comes as a business, I'm sure our rural community and even people in urban areas who are in need of employment, especially in Africa, where employment is becoming a very big problem. We see that in Ghana. And because of that, the youth is they're degrading the land into illegal mining and degrading the forest and polluting the water bodies. And so if this would come in from the perspective like a business sort of venture, I'm sure we can have a lot of people buy into it, so that restoration can be seen as an alternative livelihood kind of project to local people, and also in rural areas and in urban areas. I think urban ecosystems have also been neglected, and so we normally will talk about the forestry and rehabilitation in rural areas, but the urban centers would also need a lot of restoration. Here, in this case, we can bring in the horticulturists. The focus have always been on foresters and so on, and the ecologists, but left the horticulturists out. If we're looking at this as a business, it will be fine to bring all these actors on board so that we can have success during this decade. There are a lot of NGOs, like I mentioned earlier, who are already into this, like Tree Aid Africa is doing a lot of restoring ecosystem, ecosystems. Talk about terrestrial ecosystems or aquatic ecosystem. They're doing a lot in the whole of Africa. Ghana is one, Ethiopia, and some other countries. And I would also want to say that it will be fine to develop some educational curricula in restoration in tertiary institutions, so that we can bridge that gap. Okay, because it looks like we don't have a lot of experts in this field. And when we're talking about restoration, we need some specific or specialized expertise in this field. All these that we have mentioned would require funding. And so we need funding to support these organizations at the local level, regional level. Funding is really important. I'd like to touch on the last one, and that is building a strong network of organizations in ecosystem restoration. This is to avoid duplication. In the past, we've been talking about sustainable land management, but like now we're looking at a very broader scope. We're having a broader scope of ecosystems restoration. It will be very good to come to bring together other organizations that are already in the business and the new ones that are coming up. We're supposed to have the strong network of collaboration so that we can work very well. We can work together during this decade. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Esther, for sharing those rich reflections. And building on your point on developing some or certain educational curricula, we now have a question that I would like to direct to Steve Makungwa, which is, what should be the new restoration curricula that needs to be developed in order to scale up ecosystem restoration and meet the objectives of the UN decade? Steve, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, curriculum is a key in the building capacity, more especially at a higher education institutions. So I'll answer the question looking at my own experiences from the working in the university, using my own university, the University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, as an example. As we are all aware and know that universities or maybe higher learning institutions that include the colleges, the pinnacle center of knowledge and also for enlightenment, where we build new generations or maybe future generations of experts. So in this context then, if we are really moving into this decade of landscape restoration, we really need to ensure that our academic systems, which is defined or which is being directed by the curriculum that we implement, should be able to provide the needed skills and knowledge for our frontline staff, for our people, to be able to enhance landscape restoration on the ground. From this perspective, the situation that we currently see, not only in Malawi, but across Africa, much of our curriculum or much of our graduates are not really fit for the context that we are really working on. In many cases, the curriculum that we implement, we just copy from either in Europe or from America, where most of the professors were trained, and just cut and paste into our context in Africa, forgetting that those curricula in those countries were based on the realities, based on the society that we are targeted to, and the economies of those countries, which are different from the Malawi, or maybe African context. So it's a wake-up call that if we really utilize the current way of providing our capacity building in the universities using the curricula that we have, we may not be able to contribute effectively to enhancing landscape restoration in Africa. Therefore, what I wanted to share with you is that we needed to change the approach in terms of the way we design and also the way we implement our higher education institutions curricula that we have. We think that the curriculum that we needed to develop or to design or to implement, it must be able to transform an individual or our learners or our students, the way they see themselves and the way they see the landscapes. If they have got that transformation in themselves to realize that the landscape, that's where our lives, that's where our livelihood, that's where all what we need in life actually comes from, then with that transformation, we'll be able again to be able to determine that they are ready to contribute and do something that would actually improve the present situation of our landscape. Because as it is now, many of the graduates or many of the students that comes from our higher learning institutions, normally they are looking at the market as their measure of success. That okay, when I finish this particular program, am I going to be employed? It means we are measuring the quality of education based on the market outcomes, employment outcomes, forgetting that the employment outcomes are also a function of so many other factors that cannot be a measure of the quality of education. But individuals have to be transformed first, and then they'll be able to move further to implement and even facilitate landscape installation across Africa. So this is something that we think as a continent, we really need to seriously think through because the way we have been doing, the way we have been implementing our curricula in the higher learning institutions, it might not be the best available tool that can enhance landscape installation on the ground. We must change so that our graduates should be game changers. Our graduates should be agents of change so that they can actually be able to enhance landscape restoration in Africa. So for the UN decade that we will be launching soon, I think the core that we need to put forward is that for the UN decade to be able to achieve its ultimate results, the higher learning institution must be partners into this process so that they are the ones that will be able to provide long-term personnel, trained personnel in forest landscape installation, and be able to sustain this into the future. But us ourselves in the higher learning institution, we need to look ourselves, the way we are implementing our curriculum now, the way our curriculum were designed, we need to change that approach so that we can actually design a curriculum that is transformative, a curriculum that will change an individual and the way he sees or she sees herself and the way she sees on the landscape. In so doing, then everything would be different. So it's a new dimension that we really need to look at, and then all of us in Africa or the institution in Africa is something that we needed really to focus on and see how best we can relook and redesign our curricula that we're implementing in our colleges and universities. I think that's what I wanted to share with you with regards to curricula in response to the question that you have asked in terms of what will be the nature of the curricula that would enhance landscape installation on the ground. It's really what we have now in summary might not be the best curricula to enhance this. We needed to to redesign to respond to the complexities that are aligned with landscape installation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Steve. And yeah, building on your points on the transformation and the need to adapt to changing environments, I have a question to Jessica, which is more about the changes related to access to technologies, and in particular, access to new modalities of training anywhere and at any time, which will be instrumental for knowledge dissemination over the decade to come. So please, Jessica, how are the Landscape Academy and other distance or online training programs making a difference in terms of capacity development?
Thank you, Faustin. From GLF, we agree that access to new modalities of training anywhere and at any time will be instrumental for knowledge dissemination over the decade to come. Then the question we're asking ourselves, how is Global Landscapes Forum Landscape Academy and other distance online training making a difference in terms of capacity development? With the rapid development of the internet, which is now also penetrating the most remote areas in the world, you realize that many institutions have embraced distance or online training as the most feasible and affordable channel for learning. And this trend was quickly accelerated by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has disrupted traditional education at all levels. This has opened a whole new market for online training and education, widely available and at very low costs. We currently see a large amount of online learning modalities at all academic levels, either rooted in the classical disciplines like forestry and agriculture, or in more innovative knowledge domains such as sustainable and inclusive landscapes. The Global Landscapes Forum has taken this as an opportunity to develop a coherent package of landscape education and training, simply by providing easy access to already existing learning programs, plus by the development of additional learning programs on landscape topics which did not exist yet. The result is the Landscape Academy, which is an online platform that has brought together a range of online and offline landscape-related courses and training opportunities developed and certified by top-end universities, colleges, and professional training providers. All these courses are curated and organized by us in a simple way to be accessed by landscape professionals or future landscape professionals to help them build and advance their career. And in addition, Global Landscapes Forum, in collaboration with other partners, has started to develop additional certificate courses in areas of interest, which did not exist. Currently, we offer novel curricula on topics like landscape leadership, landscape governance, and landscape finance. We also develop certificate courses which highlight climate change, biodiversity, food and nutrition, security and urbanization from landscape perspective. So over the past 2 years, we've seen tens of thousands of learners who have found their way to courses and training that suit their needs, while up to 18,000 learners have enrolled in one of the courses developed by Global Landscapes Forum and partners themselves. Building on this success, we have now started to build a Global Landscapes Forum campus for learners to find each other and get the inspiration and practical guidance that they need. Here, they find the latest resources on landscape approaches and can also learn from their peers where and how successful landscape programs are unfolding worldwide. They can also find experts and seek specific advice or check out on the latest job opportunities or find the landscape professionals that they are looking for. A next layer in the Landscape Academy that we have started to develop is what we call restoration education. This will represent a collaborative effort of universities and colleges worldwide willing to share their landscape curricula and build the new generation of entrepreneurial restoration professionals that we need to make the UN decade a success. In this way, yes, we believe we are instrumental in the generation, sharing and distribution of knowledge that responds to a direct need. With this, we do make a difference in education, training, and capacity development on sustainable and inclusive landscapes, which is easily accessible and at a very low cost. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. And in fact, looking at this idea of entrepreneurs, restoration entrepreneurs, and looking at the results of the capacity needs assessment that highlights the gap of capacities in terms of business, in terms of access to finance, we asked a question to Musa Chipkao, who himself runs an incubator, a business incubator, and he responded via a video that we're going to show now. And this question was, the lack of capacity to mobilize varied and sufficient sources of funding is reported by many interested parties. You participated in, or you participate at the moment in an online incubation program called the Restoration Factory, supported by UNEP in partnership with Bridge 4 Billion and FAO. How important are both your daily work as an incubator and the capacity building offered by this training program to facilitate access to funding? So now let's hear his response.
Le manque de capacité à mobiliser des sources variées et suffisantes de financement dans le cadre des projets de la restauration des terres dégradées en Afrique et plus largement des projets liés à l'agriculture ou à la gestion des ressources naturelles est de plus en plus accru. Cela est dû indubitablement au faible niveau des acteurs africains à convaincre des partenaires financiers, notamment les banques, les bailleurs de fonds, les organisations non gouvernementales qui sont de plus en plus exigeants. C'est un défi auquel je fais face quotidiennement dans le cadre de mon travail d'incubateur au Centre africain d'Agrobusiness CAP, créé en 2014 au Niger. Au sein du CAP, Nous accompagnons des entrepreneurs dans les secteurs de l'agriculture et de l'agroforesterie, basés dans les 8 régions du Niger, à savoir Agadez, Difa, Dosso, Maradi, Tawa, Tillabéri, Zander et Niamey, à développer des projets solides qu'ils peuvent proposer à des sources de financement qui sont entre autres le projet PRAC, l'XDEV, la Banque Bagri Niger, la Banque Atlantique, la BOAD, la Sony Bank. À la date d'aujourd'hui, nous avons accompagné environ 233 entrepreneurs pour une enveloppe globale d'environ 908 300 US dollars à renforcer leurs projets. Les principaux défis auxquels je suis confronté au quotidien de l'accompagnement de ces entrepreneurs est surtout leur faible niveau technique, leur manque des infrastructures adéquates, leur faible accès à l'Internet, pour ne citer que ceci. Le manque de capacité des entrepreneurs à élaborer des plans d'affaires solides est une précondition pour accéder à des sources de financement. C'est dans ce cadre que je participe actuellement à un programme en ligne d'incubation intitulé la Restoration Factory, porté par l'UN en partenariat avec Bridge for Billion et la FAO. Ce coaching, encadré par une équipe de mentors, permet d'accéder via une plateforme en ligne à une variété d'outils permettant de construire progressivement un plan d'affaires solide. L'objectif fondamental de ce programme qui s'inscrit dans la durée est d'amener l'entrepreneur au sortir de cette formation à avoir en main un business plan irréprochable qu'il pourra porter en toute autonomie auprès des bailleurs. De telles initiatives sont salutaires et peuvent être qu'efficaces dans la mobilisation de financement pour la restauration des terres dégradées dans le monde et particulièrement en Afrique où le constat est le plus amer.
We warmly thank Moussa for his contributions, and just a couple of words on the restoration factory. So far 13 projects have been onboarding and are currently participating in the first cohort of the program. And those projects are accompanied by 26 voluntary mentors, as well as, in most cases, a country focal point, so that entrepreneurs really benefit from a coherent and extensive level of support. So, ensuring that a generation of young people is fully equipped to tackle the challenges of restoration is at the heart of the decade. And FAO is about to launch a training program for youth in Africa in partnership with the University of Yale through its initiative ELTI. So my next question goes to Manuela, who is an alumni from this ELTI initiative. And so I would like to ask you, Manuela, why is this focus on youth so important, and why is this ELTI training an important initiative to support building a generation of African restoration champions? Over to you.
Thank you, Faustine. Youth play a key role in the success and sustainability of countries and states, including initiatives. So youth represent a great part of the world's population, and over 70% of the population in the age of under 30, according to UNESCO. So it puts Africa as the world's youngest continent. So because young live longer with the consequences of current environmental decisions than their elders, so future generations will be more affected by decisions to the extent to which they have access to environmental concerns such as depletion of resources, biodiversity loss, and degradation of ecosystem. So they need to focus on capacity building of youth in Africa, secure and guarantee the effectiveness of restoration efforts in Africa. Why ELTI training is an important initiative to support building capacity building of generation restoration of champions in Africa. By training youth African champions, we stabilize and establish a well-sufficient transmitting of value based on forest and landscape restoration in Africa. So capacity building of Youth Africa will enhance the achievement of African countries in the different targets, such as Bond Challenge, IKE target, UN Declaration of Forest and Restoration Decade. So ELTI training is the best training initiative that has ability to give more insight of forest and landscape restoration. So in addition, it brings more trainees able to train others Therefore, by attending this program, future leaders and youth will easily fill the gap of inequality of getting access to innovative knowledge in terms of concepts, methods, practices, and lastly, resource mobilization and forest and landscape restoration. And lastly, as ELTI alumni and FLR practitioner, I experimented the FLA project design. And by the end of the course, I've been able to write a project proposal for the restoration of Bazu-Bangui Hill in Bangui in Central African Republic. So ELTI helped me to sharpen my stamina in work, and it was an interesting and exciting challenge. In fact, I've been able to accumulate the work with demanding courses with an important bibliography to explore each week and a dedicated beaches with informative webinars. So I highly recommend every youth, especially African, to be part of these relevant initiatives, ELTI. If there is a training to take, I can assure you that ELTI meets the highest standards in terms of FLR training. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to give a few words on ELTI, so this Environmental Leadership and Training Initiative, which is an initiative of the Forest School at the Yale School of Environment, has existed since 2006 with an online program since 2011. And to date, ELTI has trained 8,156 individuals from over 60 countries with 159 field courses and more than 44 online and blended courses, of which 14 have focused exclusively on Africa. With this, I would like to close the panel discussion and thank again our great panelists for their speeches. And I have the pleasure to introduce now Cora Van Oosten, who is Senior Project Leader at the Wageningen Center for Development and Innovation of the Wageningen University, who will conclude this plenary and lead us to the workshop. Over to you, Cora.
Thank you very much, Faustine. Assuming that everybody hears me, thanks for giving me the not so easy task to wrap a incredibly rich conversation into just a few lines. I think that's quite impossible. I learned so much from this great session, and there are so many conclusions to be drawn. Let me just highlight a few things that I believe are really important outcomes of this session that can be taken forward throughout the next conference and the decade. First, I am absolutely thrilled that all speakers seem to agree that capacity development and education are the pillars of restoration and should therefore also be the pillars of the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration to make it a success. They also seem to agree that restoration capacities are not restricted to the technical capacities of just planting trees, however important these are, but they also include the technical capacities to restore grasslands, to restore livelihoods, to restore social relations and systems. But even more important, these restoration capacities do also comprise social skills. The social skills, that's the way of bringing stakeholders together and creating synergies. That's what all those speakers talked about, and creating landscape visions and moving forward collectively. And then something that also speakers seem to agree on is that besides technical and social skills, there are the institutional skills which are needed to really make sure that local restoration initiatives are better embedded in spatial planning, in policies, national means that it's not just students that need to have these capacities. It's actually everybody engaged is at play, is important to raise their level of professionalism and of motivation. Development of restoration capacities, therefore, so everybody said, has to be mainstreamed in curricula of education institutes, but also much beyond. They have to be embodied in individuals and their behavior, in organizations and their actions, and in policies and politics. And that requires a systemic approach to capacity development. That means that there's not just one single road to go, but that restoration, joining or developing restoration capacities has to happen through multiple roads that continually cross. It needs truly learning from each other and collaboration amongst all of us. I believe we're on this road together. We're on the road, we've started walking, we're at the start of the decade, and it's to us to make this decade a success. And I'm thrilled to be on this road with so many of you, because we have an exciting decade to come. Right, and Faustine, you asked me a second question, which I think fits very well at this moment of wrapping up this part of the session, and that is your contest. Because the decade has started, and LTI, that we already heard of from Manuela, together with FAO, has launched a restoration capacity development contest as we speak today. This interesting contest is actually leading to a really nice chance, an opportunity to get professional training at Yale University. Well, who does not want that? This particular course through the contest is focused on West African and Central African students or youth professionals, and they have the opportunity to get exclusive training in restoration in French. The contest to get free access opened today, and I think you are now seeing a slide with a link, and I challenge you, give it a try, because this is an opportunity that should not be missed. The course will run in November and December, and it will build your capacities in all senses, all related to restoration. So make sure you get in. Seats are limited, but if you take part in the contest with a good motivation, you may be lucky. So give it a try. All right, with this, I think it's the honor for me to close this first part of the session, but don't worry, we continue with the second part. And this second part is a workshop. It is a continuation of the same topic, but it will be even more hands-on and even more practical. We've listened to all the presentations and the stories and the experiences. We now want to act with a smaller group of participants or a larger group of participants, doesn't matter. And we want to prepare a call for action that we can present to the UN decade leaders, which we all are, to place capacity development and education at the core of the UN decade. The space in the Zoom room may be limited, but if you stay on the WUVA, or if you are on WUVA, no worry, you will be able to follow the entire workshop. We particularly encourage educators and trainers and capacity developers and practitioners to take part, because we want their voice to be echoed in the call to action. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you just hang on for a few seconds, and then you will automatically be brought to the workshop space, or the space where we are will be transformed into a workshop space. I'm seeing now the breakout group link. I'm not sure if that's to happen now. No, not yet breakout groups. Sorry for this. So people, we can stay where we are. And I would like to move to the first part of our agenda. And the first part of the agenda is Patrick Callas. Patrick Callas is Capacity Development Lead for FAO. And he will help us understand what this systemic capacity actually is and how that works. Patrick, over to you, please.
All right, Cora and colleagues, thank you very much. I will try to be brief, as the discussions have been extremely rich, but I'm pleased to be here. And colleagues and friends, make no mistake. Make no mistake. Transformation and ambition at scale will not materialize if we take a business as usual capacity building approach. we need a systemic view to achieve systemic change and transformation. What does this mean? So let me illustrate systemic capacity development, looking at this picture and imagining a grassland, and asked ourselves the question, what does it take to restore or maintain this grassland? Does it mean that we pull on its leaves and branches, or we nurture the roots? And if we nurture the roots, in fact, we're coming back to a fundamental principle of capacity development, which is, as Esther alluded in the beginning of our presentation, anchored in good and sustainable development practice. This is what we should do from the start. And here's some linkage to why that is important. We have country ownership, country-driven actions. There's a joint commitment to reach this paradigm shift and reach more sustainable results at scale. That's important because these principles underline all the work we've been doing in the task force on good practices, including the framing of our capacity needs assessment. So more concretely, let me unpack this a little bit further. So if we look at this grassland landscape, we look at a systemic view. And the first, of course, is made out of people. It's about awareness, understanding, knowledge, and skills. It is about internalizing what this decade means. We all can be an agent of change, but we have to understand what this means. So it's a process of internalization. But we also want to enable and empower people to be able to restore. Secondly, it's more than that, colleagues. We need to strengthen the social fabric and the collective action mechanisms and the networks to reach scale. And this is the organizational capacity level. We're looking at formal and informal organizations which are connected. We're looking at multi-stakeholder processes and spaces where dialogue is happening for action. As an example, we are looking at planning and decision-making processes for restoration among different land users. We're looking at spatial planning. So it's the net of the network that we need to look at. Finally, we have the enabling, so-called enabling environment, which are the government's mechanisms, which are the rules, laws, and policies. These things are extremely important because even if we train and enable and empower individuals to do restoration, these overarching factors may play a fundamental role in either incentivizing or disincentivizing our actions. An example here would be, we need to look at the policies. Are different policies and investments aligned to be conducive for restoration? And we need to look at governance mechanisms at national level, but specifically at the landscape level. So all of this is interconnected. So when we take a systemic lens on restoration, this is the lens that we need to take. Now, I said I'll be brief. I want to make a final observation that the process matters just as much as the product. Capacity development is not a product, it is a process. And the process needs to be nurtured and facilitated to reach the desired scale. Now, just to hint that these principles and applications are directly applied in many different projects, but including two quite large ones that are just being launched right now as part of the Global Environmental Facility. One is on dryland sustainable landscapes, 11 countries, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, and then the Food Systems, Land Use and Restoration Global Program in 28 countries. So I encourage you to visit and have a look there. So before giving over to Cora, I also want to thank Cora and Bas from Wageningen of sharpening this presentation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Cora, I hope I didn't rush too much, but now let's go into the group work because we need to hear your suggestions for actions. Cora, over to you.
Yes, all right. Thank you very much, Patrick. Yes, you did rush, but thanks for rushing because we want you to speak now. We are with many people in the Zoom room, and the people in the Zoom room will get a link to the various breakout groups. But I've also just learned that those who are in WUVA, they have seen a link in the chat. If you click on that link, you will also be able to join the breakout groups. So please do so. We will have busy breakout groups. Wonderful. The breakout groups, people will follow questions. And my colleague Jessica, you have the questions right here, okay? Can you read the questions to us, please?
Yeah, so we will have 3 breakout rooms and of 15 minutes each because of time. So we have breakout group 1 will be focusing on what individual capacities, those are awareness, motivations, knowledge, skills need to be developed to bring restoration to scale. And how can this be done in the short, medium, and long term? So we will focus majorly on the concrete actions. Breakout room 2 will have them focus on organizational capacities that need to be developed to bring restoration to scale, and how this can be done in the short, medium, and long term. And then breakout group 3 will focus on the enabling governance capacities that need to be developed to bring restoration to scale, and what can be done in short, medium, and long term. So what are the actions? So those are the 3 questions that we'll be focusing on in our breakout rooms.
Okay, that's beautiful. We cover the entire spectrum of systemic restoration capacities. Massimo, can we have the links to the breakout groups, please? And for all participants, have fun and be very, very active and practical. Here we go.
Hello, everyone. I see you're all clicking to your breakout rooms. Breakout room 2 on organizational capacities and on governance. In this room, the main room, we'll be discussing the individual capacities. So for those of you who want to address the questions of individual capacities, you can stay put. And then I'd like to encourage us all to go on the speaker view, so that the gallery view, sorry, so that we can all see each other. So Brigitte, hi, welcome. Faustine, I see your camera's on. Fabrice, good afternoon. And Janice, hi everyone. If we could all just switch on our cameras and then we can all say hi to each other. A quick wave. We don't have time for introductions, but I'd just like to see who is here. We also have some universities joining us. Fatuma, I see you. Are you with us? And Professor Damiana, hi. Good morning. Fatuma and Professor Damiana, I'd like to invite you to co-moderate this with me, to take us through these questions. Faustine will be our diligent note taker, so we've prepared a couple of jam boards for all of us to address this question. So I see we should be settling in quickly, and I'd suggest we kickstart. Professor Damiana, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
I'd just like to hand it over straight to you. I'm going to screen share and we can start brainstorming and answering the first question. So bear with me 1 second. Can you all see my screen?
I can see it myself.
Perfect. I'm also going to share the Jamboard links in the chat so that you can jump on here with me if you like. That's in the chat. So Damiana, please, the floor is yours. What individual capacities need to be developed to bring restoration to scale? We need to do this very quickly, and then we'll jump to the next question because we have 15 minutes.
Kibali, do you want me to take up the floor?
Yes, please.
Okay, and push the discussion forward.
Yes, exactly. Invite all of us to the room.
Okay, thank you so much. And for joining this particular group, I wish to welcome you to the group. I am Damiana, and our first question is: what are the individual capacities, awareness, motivation, knowledge, skills, competencies which we need to develop to bring restoration to a scale? So I welcome comments from members. Thank you. Please feel free. You can also type on the public chat. And of course, you can see, you can also access the Jamboard from the link which has been shared in the public chat. So kindly share ideas with us. Kimberly, am I audible?
Yes.
You hear me? Okay.
I can hear you very well. We have a very shy group of people. Maybe Professor Damiana, yes, we need to start calling on
yes.
people.
Yes, I think I need to call them to be able to participate in this.
But our Jamboard is getting very colorful, so people are putting, but please.
Okay, that is great. But we also want to hear people speak a bit. They can put up their hand and we can give them an opportunity to speak a bit. What are some of these individual capacities which we can be able to develop to bring restoration to scale?
If you allow me to contribute, Michael
yes,
from
Michael. Yes, Michael.
You know,
thank you.
Just to connect to some of the discussions before, instead of going into the very, very long-term changes of curricula, why not directly to enhance interdisciplinary seminars, lectures, project work, where social scientists, economists, silviculturists, agriculturists get together, doing a joint teaching and joint explaining, elaborating things. This can be a fast track, actually, implemented immediately in the next semester at the university, at a technical training school. So have this interdisciplinarity to show problem solving, let me say, issues on land degradation, on reversing degradation and going to sustainable land use. This could be done very fast, actually. It's only a matter of bringing those different disciplines at the same university, the same training institutions together to jointly design that. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael, for your contribution on the role, all the importance of interdisciplinary approach. Thank you. We have Madalena. Kindly unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm Madalena from Kenya, and I think if I am to add what are the individual capacities, I'll suggest sharing the information you have, especially with I being one of the journalists. So I feel as if when I'm educated, it's easier to educate even the people in the local areas, in the rural areas where they're mostly affected, but it's because they lack the information on the ground. So when journalists are educated, then I think it's easier to share the information on the ground, which would make a huge impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madalena, for your contribution, sharing information with the different stakeholders. She has put into, she has given an example of journalists who can be able to reach out to the community for enhanced awareness and, of course, engagement. Something else I can see people are really throwing in their points into their Jamboard. Can I also push a few people to say something? I know we do have a few people in the room. I don't know whether Fabrice, can you say something? Mukanano. Fabrice, if you can hear me, you can say something. We also have Janice, if you can hear me, you can contribute something, and you can also continue contributing on the Jamboard.
Damiana, if I may.
Yes, yes.
Unfortunately, we're always racing against time. And it's in fact why we also wanted to focus on the question of how. And I see a lot of hows in the Jamboard already. And we have a second Jamboard prepared, which is how can this be done in the short, medium, and long term? So within the context of the decade, we're really looking at the actions. So short term being, what can we do tomorrow? What can we all do tomorrow? One small step that we can all take tomorrow. The medium term in the next year. What can we all do in the next year? That's similar to what Michael Klein was saying about start integrating already and taking baby steps towards interdisciplinary studies. And the long term. What can we do in the next 5 to 10 years? Maybe we can focus on this question in the remainder. I think we must have about 8 or 9 minutes left and really look at these concrete actions. Back to you.
Thank you, Kimberly, for that. Members present, kindly let us contribute to this. How can we do this in the short term? Now and tomorrow, medium, perhaps next year, long term, and so on. So kindly let us start throwing our suggestions, our ideas, now that we have very limited time to complete this very important assignment. Madalena, your hand is up again. Kindly, can you say something? Thank you.
Okay, for me, with the short-term goal, I think we need to start by we ourselves taking responsibility. So we need to start by we being positive, wanting to make a change. Then for the medium, we need to engage others in the process. For the long term, as much as we continue with the few people that maybe you've educated, probably it will make a huge impact in the next years. We will continue educating others more to know the importance of land restoration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madalena, for that contribution. Very good contribution for short and as well as medium term actions.
May I add one keyword for this question? This would be mentorship. Yes. You could go in short term, medium term, and long term. Take people to the field, do all your restoration project and use them, because there are many good initiatives are going on in all sorts of corners in Africa, where then actually students or technicians being mentored by showing them directly in the field with communities, with decision making, with conflict mediation and so on, to see how these things. So mentorship, I think, is key to short, medium, as well as long term. Thanks.
Great, Michael. Mentorship key too. And that seems to cut across all the terms, short, medium, and long term. Janice.
Damiana, just before we jump to Janice, I'd just like to acknowledge all the Hoover participants who are filling in the Hoover poll at the moment.
Wow, that is great.
The responses here. So they answered the question in one word. What do you think is most needed to enhance individual capacities to restore Africa's drylands? We're lucky. We can answer with a few more words. They have the difficult task of answering with one word. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. Collaboration, awareness, education, funding, commitment, popular science, good policy, a lot of the things we touched upon as well. So thank you everybody in the audience for contributing to this. And I'll pop back to our Jamboard and then we can, I think Janice was next in line. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It links a little bit to what we've said before about knowledge and maybe even mentorship. But I think really that networking and also this intergenerational knowledge sharing in the short term is really important, because it takes time to develop these capacities and we can't do everything ourselves. So really to have good collaborations and strong networks and to know where you can turn to when you need help on a particular issue or a partner, I think that that's extremely valuable in the short term, but also in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janice, for those good contributions. Kimberly, how are we doing? Do we still have more time?
We do have a little bit of time left.
Okay. So we can continue receiving, people can continue throwing in the ideas on the jumbo board that you can see it's slowly filling in.
I added in another one from a colleague from Anya Gasna, who's bilaterally chatting to me, to include traditional land use and cultures as one of the keys in order to build restoration capacities. Thanks for that, Anya. So I've thrown it in on the Jamboard.
Thank you so much. Any more?
This is excellent.
Yeah, it's coming out very well, very, very well.
It looks like we have a lot to do tomorrow already. All those pink ones on the left. Start doing it now.
Yes. There's a lot to pull together tomorrow. A lot. So I know we have people throwing in, but we don't mind getting some people say something. Robin, I'm sorry. We want to hear some of the voices of the people in here.
Robin, maybe list the priority ones in your view, the priority action items.
Yeah. And I'm thinking very much about individual level here. And I do think, we can start to do things right away within the research community as well as the educational community. And mentoring is important, but also showing what kind of research people, students and researchers can do that is directly applied to improving the evidence base for restoration and addressing important questions and problems. We need to connect the researchers in very applied ways.
Right. Thank you, Robin, for those wonderful contributions. We have Tony and we have Richard. Can we hear your voices, please? Tony, if you are in, Richard, if you are in, we can hear your voices. Can throw in some points here and there. Yes, Richard?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Concord Sangumremi. I'm together with Richard, and I wanted to contribute to this to this question related to individual capacity need to be developed to bring restoration to the scale. So I wanted to add gender issues. So how the tasks are distributed really between different genders in terms of men and women. It is a very good aspect that I found it. Mainly one of the key intervention we can use, for example, it's an agroforestry, and sometimes the women are spending many hours in the land, in the farms, working with different activities. But if people may be aware about these really gender issues in the forest landscape restorations activities can be a key really for successful of these activities. Thank you.
Thank you. You brought in a very important dimension on gender roles and responsibilities in others. Thank you so much, Richard, for those contributions.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. If we still have more time, we can still hear more voices from the people in the group. Margaret, if you can say something, that would be great.
It's okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
And it's great to be part of the session. I think one of the things a lot of it's on the Jamboard at the moment, but just what can I do immediately tomorrow? I think a lot of us say things and then don't actually take the action ourselves. So you sort of need to make a commitment to yourself that you're going to start doing something. And then how do you link into the community or the network that you're involved in? And how do you share what you already know or what other networks you find along the way? I think sometimes people are afraid of sharing what they know. And we need to all start being braver and connecting ourselves in those networks, systemic ways that can start making a movement and making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margaret, for those contributions and good observations. Kibali, back to you.
Yeah, I think we should be ending this breakout room very shortly. We are in the main room, so everyone is in a breakout room and they should all be joining us very soon. So they're going to come back in here.
Thank you. But we can still continue talking.
We can still
making our contributions.
Yes, and the Jamboard is filling up. Maybe we need to open up another one.
I can see it's getting full, so perhaps maybe to roll over to another. What? Yes, can open another one so that we can have more people throw in their points.
What we can also do is have a look at what the breakout rooms are doing. So in breakout room 2, they're looking at the question of what organizational capacities need to be developed. And here they must be doing a lot of discussing. They're doing a lot less Jamboard interaction than us. But I'm reading here, organizations need to be categorized, get the strengths and weaknesses from each organization, which results into opportunities that we can work with. Universities, research organizations, private institutions, donor organizations. So I guess this is looking at, dividing the different stakeholder groups, because organizations is quite a big umbrella term. Curricula need to be transformed, so that's similar to our point about interdisciplinary research and starting tomorrow with integrating these sort of interdisciplinary aspects of restoration. So integrating social capacities, technical capacities, institutional capacities into curricula. That's great. Let's have a look what the third group is doing. They're also busy here in the breakout room 3. So they're looking at enabling policy and governance and what's needed there. Workshops, such as this one. That's good to hear. Linkages between scales, local, national, regional, and international. A hot topic throughout this conference, the issue of scale. Mobilizing universities. Excellent.
If I could comment
please,
on the how with interdisciplinary curricula, I've been involved in a lot of research on education. And I think one advantage to sell on doing that is that there's actually cost and time benefits. There's a tendency in a lot of countries that there's reduced funds for these kind of practical and field-based activities. And so when the professors come together to collaborate on a joint project, you could make one excursion and look at multiple dimensions, discussing with the communities and looking at the soils and ecosystem functions and also biodiversity and so on. So that's actually a way maybe to motivate people to implement that sooner rather than later.
Thank you very much, Janice. I also see a really nice point, Professor Damiana. It's time to train action-oriented research, restoration scholars. I like that.
Yes, it's a good point, Kimberly. Very, very good one. And I really like the way we are active on the Jamboard, throwing in our ideas. So Kimberly, there's a lot to sort out. There's a lot to digest.
It's a lot. I hope you're going to help me with it. 16 seconds to close. So in 60 seconds, the breakout room will close. All of our colleagues in the other breakout rooms will join us in here.
Maybe another point would be, if I just may come in as a keyword, a non-degrading vegetation management. I mean, we don't want to restore now the next 100 years. We want to repair something and then, of course, move towards a land use, a forest use, an agriculture use, and from conservation to production, which is non-degrading. I think this would be the ideal. So that restoration is then actually only a normal part of a management cycle, and we don't degrade like we did in the last 70 years. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, Michael, for that contribution. And you can see also on the public chat, there's a lot flowing in. Kimberly, you can see that.
Brigitte posted something interesting about practical knowledge. I remember when I had the choice to go to university or to do a practical apprenticeship, as is common in Northern Europe. I could either do forestry, which is forest management, and to be honest, you learn how to cut down trees more than you learn how to plant, or I could go down the academic route of studying very theoretical, forest and nature-based conservation. So I like this comment of practical knowledge and action-oriented research and learning and integrating that into curricula. And that is done with IUFRO's work, for example. I know with the training programs that they have of FLR practitioners, that's great. But how to root that down to the younger generations as well. So involve the youth, but in the younger curriculum development, when you study geography and sciences, that would also be great to include that action-oriented mindset, I think.
Correct. Thank you. So I'm sure we are now joined by other groups. I can see the numbers have gone up. Kibali?
Yes, good spotting. The numbers have gone up. Everyone is here. Welcome back to breakout room 1, which is also our main room. Cora, I'd like to hand over to you to wrap up this fantastic session. We have a very colorful Jamboard. Lots of work to do.
Thank you very much, Damiana and Kim. We were lucky from the governance group to have a sneak peek in your group work, because I realized that your cards were also many as ours, but very different. So I can only guess that the organizational groups has also many cards, but again, very different ones. So it will be up to us now, I would say the entire group, to start playing with the cards and getting an organic or a systemic overview of the total. However, time is running short and we're supposed to cut the session. So what I propose is that we do the analysis of all the cards, not collectively, not now, but we'll do it in a smaller group and we'll get you all informed about the outcomes so that we have time to go to the call for action. Would that be all right? Kim, what do you say? Or other people, what do we say?
I want to hear it, Cora. Let's go for it.
Yeah, okay, that's it. We can linger and continue playing, but let's go for it. The call to action. I call upon our dear Steve, whom we heard before, Steve Makumwa. Steve has been running around in all the breakout groups, and he's been listening carefully, and he did the great job of drafting something that could become our call to action. Still drafty draft, but already quite coherent and making sense. Steve, can I hand over to you and hear the embryonic call to action?
Thank you so much, Cora. Yes, what we have basically is really the starting point. It's really the real rough draft of some of the ideas, some of the issues that have come out of this session or from the presentations, and some of the issues that have come out of the our breakout groups. But we are going, as Cora has indicated, we are going to analyze again all these issues and then to enrich this call for action. So what I have here is just to give a snapshot of what is it that we seem to have agreed upon from the beginning of this session and up to this time around. So this is what we are calling call for corrective action, which we plan to submit this to UN Decade, the people that are doing the mechanics of UN Decade, so that they can actually hear our voice in areas of capacity building. So the first, as a preamble, we are saying the participants of this workshop are very aware that we have only one generation to turn the planetary environmental crisis around. We have only 1 decade to bend the curve. So it is high time we move beyond words into actions at scale. The participants anonymously state that the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration will only succeed if it puts capacity development in the core of its strategies and programs. Following the genius nature of ecosystems, the participants call for country-driven processes of systemic restoration capacity development based on the individual, organizational, and governance capacities to bring restoration to scale. Such a systemic approach will target all actors engaged in restoration, including the individual farmers, herders, women, men, youth, inhabitants of landscapes who have been restoring the landscapes in which they live. 2, the organizations, companies, and governments who are implementing restoration projects within the landscapes that they work. 3, the national and continental policy makers, politicians, and business leaders who are to develop the enabling environment to make restoration work for people on the ground. In order to develop the restoration capacities of individuals, there's an urgent need for African schools, colleges, and universities to design and develop landscape restoration curricula that are focused on providing learners with access to knowledge that will transform their sense of who they are and what they can do in their local landscapes. Colleges and universities in particular are well placed to develop generations of new leaders and skilled professionals who can drive transformation of our local landscapes. 2, there is an urgent need for African universities to partner and work closely in research, in restoration curriculum design and development, its delivery, monitoring, and evaluation. Now, in order to raise the capacity of organizations, there's an urgent need for organizations to learn how to work together, especially those organizations working to raise their capacity to jointly build landscape platforms, networks, and multi-stakeholder partnerships to initiate and coordinate restoration action on the ground. No need for competition, as there's enough work to keep us all busy. More collective action requires the support of those having the funds to invest in the landscapes. Capacities to develop sustainable businesses and financial models need to grow and keep pace with increased capacities to be sensitive to tenure rights, social issues, gender, and youth inclusions at all levels. With regards to governance systems, there is an urgent need for decision and policymakers, legislators, and of African governments to learn and be aware of the right mix of policies and regulations that can provide an enabling environment for local actors to accelerate landscape restoration on the ground. Policymakers play an important role of shaping regulatory and institutional environment that enables landscape restoration implementation and ensures that conservation measures and undegraded land management practices are employed on a sustainable basis. Therefore, policymakers are to be introduced to landscape approach, particularly understanding the interlinkages among various economic sectors and their impact on land degradation and management. What can UN Decade on Ecosystem do? Leaders of a UN Decade, which we all are, we believe that it's not a separate group. I mean, we are part of the UN Decade. Therefore, we are saying we need to start creating information channels to stop duplicating and start aligning efforts. We need to have insight in the knowledge products that already exist and which are the ones that are still needed and have these developed. Having insight into the great efforts of individuals, organizations, schools, colleges, and universities help to strengthen what we have and develop what we don't have yet. Putting schools, colleges, universities, and capacity development organizations in charge will help in accelerating action on the ground. The participants of this session, all teachers, trainers, and capacity developers are fully committed to the above. They are willing to invest time in working out this call for collaborative action in more detail to initiate a process of systemic change from today. That's the end of our collective action. Thank you, Kola.
Wow, this is exactly why we like Stephen so much. Incredible how you could capture all these points in such a short time. I'm very happy that we have used more time because we needed more time and we need even more time. But I think we have started a debate that is there to continue. We had more than 300 people taking part in this conversation. That's lovely. We may need many more. I think we have great players here in the house who will be able to carry this forward. You have all been registered on some sort of system or a list somewhere, so we'll get back to you with a final call to action and a good plan for follow-up. Herewith, I would like to not say much more because we'll be kicked out of our session. I thank you all for your lively attendance. I thank you a lot for the richness of your ideas and contributions. And I'm very happy that collectively we are putting restoration, education, and capacity development on the agenda. Thank you all very much.